Okay. Growing up, I have always been passionate about baking. I love to bake cookies, brownies, breads, and cakes, especially cakes and cupcakes. Those are my favorite. Well, my name is Avery, and I'm going to talk to you guys today about baking cakes or cupcakes. Now, cakes have been around since the 17th century, so they have definitely changed over time, and there's a million different ways to bake them, bake different looks, styles, flavors, all of that. But I want to talk to you guys about a more simple way to bake. If you want to go out and find all your own ingredients, go ahead by all means. But if you're more of a beginner, you can start off by going to your local grocery store and buying a box of cake mix. Now, to look at some cake mixes that I definitely like and are my favorites, we'll look at Betty Crocker or Pillsbury. Either one are great. I think they're both very moist and have great flavors. They also come in several different flavors, so you have a lot to pick from. If you also want to dye your own cake and change it colors, make it look cool, funky, have a tie-dye cake, you can do that as well, and it'll still keep the flavor. Now, to look at ingredients, if you have one of these boxed cake mixes, on the back, they're typically only going to involve around 3 ingredients. Now that's really nice because that means the rest of the ingredients, like the flour and the sugar and everything else, is already measured for you and pre-packaged. So you just have to dump that in the bowl and add these ingredients. It asks for a cup of water, a half cup of vegetable oil, and 3 eggs. Now, these are ingredients you will have to get yourself and you do not want to stray away from because these ingredients, those specific measurements, are going to determine the whole just consistency of your cake. Now, first looking at the water, we want to talk about moisture, your texture, and all of that in your cake. In an article by the Journal of Food Engineering, they talk about rheology and vapor content in your cake. And so they talk about how your texture and your substance of the cake, that is all determined by the rheology and vapor content. So if you change these, you're going to alter that cake substance. But rheology is a study of the flow or deformation of matter, but specifically gases or liquid forms. And cake batter is going to be kind of a thicker liquid, maybe you might call it a soft solid. So that is rheology, and then water content, we know what that is. So if you're baking, you're not adding these ingredients correctly, or you're trying to bake at a higher temperature, you are going to alter these contents, and that texture of your cake and your density will be affected. Next, with that vegetable oil, I read in this article that there's actually 8 different types of vegetable oils. They all have different smoke points, and the vegetable oils with higher smoke points are the more reliable vegetable oils. So if you go to the store, you can just get the typical bottle that will say vegetable oil, but if you do use canola oil, that one is also very reliable. And then looking at eggs, in an article about ingredient functionality, it talks about the job of the eggs. So when you're cooking with those eggs, those proteins are going to start changing and congealating, and that is when they are going from a liquid to a solid. And so when you take those proteins with the starch from the flour, they're going to form and cook, and they're going to form that crust coat. That is going to be the outside of your cake. Cakes typically usually cook from the outside to the inside. So that's when at the end, like in this next picture, they tell you to poke it with a toothpick, check it. That is how you're going to know your cake is done. You want to bake at this right temperature. It says 365 here on the back of the Betty Crocker box. Do not try to cook at a higher temperature or you're going to ruin your cake. You want to be patient. I think baking teaches a lot of awesome life lessons like patience, measuring, paying attention to detail, all of that. So you'll follow these directions, and when you poke your cake with a toothpick and it does not come out gooey, anything like that, your toothpick comes out clean, your cake is done and it is ready to cool. Now we're going to talk about decorating, but let me remind you, before you start decorating, make sure your cake is cool because your frosting or anything you add to that cake will melt if it is not fully cool. So let your cake cool and then move on to decorating. So for decorating, there are lots of ways to decorate, but first you need to pick your frosting. There are frostings and there are icings. Frostings are going to be thicker based, great for crumb coating, filling the insides of cakes, or piping with. Icing is going to be for more detailed work. So if you want to draw letters, write, anything like that would be great for icing. Icing is going to be shinier, also a thinner consistency. But Again, if you're at the store, you bought your cake mix, you might as well just buy some pre-made icing. It's a lot easier than making your own, but if you want to go for that, do it. A trick though that I learned is if you are piping, which is what I'm covering next, if you're piping and decorating, creating different textures with your icing, it's smart to add powdered sugar to these different store-bought icings because it's going to make it thicker and your piping shapes will hold a lot better. This icing can be a little thin, or this frosting will be thin. Now there are different pipes you can use, lots of different shapes, sizes, all of that. You can go to any of your local stores or even a Hobby Lobby and buy different pipe sets. That's what I did, and you can play around with different designs. I think decorating is the most fun part because you can get as creative and intricate with the decorations as you want, or you can be very, very simple. Now, I hope you guys have enjoyed learning about baking, how it kind of works, and looking at the different icing tips. I hope you guys do go out and try it on your own, and then later you will be able to say that it was all a piece of cake. Thank you.